I am Dustin, 67 years old, and retired after 4 decades pouring concrete and raising steel beams. I raised my son Thomas alone after cancer took my Marie when the boy was just 10. These days, my modest pension helps with bills in the house we share with his family. At least it did until those lottery numbers changed everything. When $53 million entered the picture, I became disposable garbage to them. But they never bothered checking whose signature was on that ticket. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments section below. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you want to find out what happened when they realized their $1 million mistake. For 42 years, I worked construction across 3 states. Started as a teenager carrying lumber and finished as site supervisor before my back finally gave out. I built schools, hospitals, office buildings, and hundreds of homes with these hands. The calluses never fully disappeared even in retirement. That work ethic and pride in building things that last, I tried to instill that in Thomas after his mother passed. Marie died from aggressive breast cancer when Thomas was only 10 years old. The treatments drained our savings, but losing her broke something in both of us. I still remember that little boy clutching her hand in the hospital, not understanding why Mommy was getting thinner and weaker each visit. After she was gone, it was just the 2 of us against the world. Thomas had her eyes and gentle spirit. Smart kid too. While I never made it past high school, he devoured books and earned straight A's. When he got accepted to State University, I picked up every overtime shift possible. Some weeks I worked 80 hours, came home just to shower and sleep 4 hours before heading back to the site. My knees and back still remind me of those years, but seeing him walk across that stage in his cap and gown made every ache worthwhile. He met Jessica during his junior year. She studied business administration and came from the kind of family that had vacation homes and new cars every 2 years. The first time she visited our modest rental, I saw that subtle look of judgment cross her face. Nothing obvious enough to call out, just the slightest wrinkle of her nose when she thought I wasn't looking. Still, Thomas was crazy about her, and I wanted him to be happy. After graduation, they got married in a ceremony I could barely afford my share of. Her parents covered most of it, which they never let me forget. Thomas got a job at an accounting firm, and Jessica started working in marketing. They bought a small house in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy but a good starter home. I stayed in my apartment visiting them for Sunday dinners and holidays. 3 years ago, when I finally had to retire at 64, my monthly pension barely covered rent and basic necessities. Thomas suggested I move in with them to save money. Jessica smiled and nodded, but I caught that momentary tightness around her eyes. Still, they had 2 spare bedrooms since the kids were still sharing a room, so I accepted with promises to contribute what I could. The first 6 months were harmonious enough. I watched my grandkids, 5-year-old Emma and 3-year-old Jack, while Jessica worked. I fixed leaky faucets, repainted rooms, and cooked dinner most weeknights. I thought I was pulling my weight, but comments started slipping into conversations. "Dad, the cable bill is higher since you moved in," Thomas would mention casually. "Dustin, we need to buy groceries twice as often now," Jessica would say while reviewing their budget. Their house was modest, about 1,800 square feet with a small backyard. The neighborhood was middle class, filled with young families stretching their budgets. Thomas made decent money, but Jessica had champagne tastes. She complained about their kitchen countertops not being granite, about their neighbors getting a new SUV while they kept their 6-year-old sedan. I watched Thomas transform gradually after marriage. The boy who once volunteered at the same homeless shelter where his mother had worked now worried about appearances and status. He joined the country club he couldn't afford because Jessica insisted it was necessary for networking. Their credit card statements, which they sometimes left on the kitchen counter, showed balances that made my stomach clench. The tension in the house grew as their financial struggles intensified. Thomas started staying later at the office. Jessica shopped more despite their mounting debt, and I tried to make myself smaller, using less water, eating simpler foods, turning off lights obsessively. My presence had become a constant reminder of their financial limitations. One night, about 6 months before everything changed, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom. "We could save at least $800 a month if your father wasn't here," Jessica whispered harshly. "What am I supposed to do, throw him out? He raised me by himself." Jess, Thomas responded, but his voice lacked conviction. "We're drowning here, Tom. The second mortgage, the credit cards, the club membership. Something has to give, and it's not going to be our future. I quietly retreated to my room that night, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering if my late wife would recognize the man our son had become. Still, I understood their stress. Money problems can poison even the strongest relationships, and Thomas and Jessica never had that solid foundation to begin with. Every Thursday for over 30 years, I bought a lottery ticket. Same gas station, same numbers, same ritual. $5 that Marie would have gently scolded me for wasting, but it was my one small extravagance. The numbers never changed: 7, 15, 23, 27, 38, and 42. Marie's birthday, our anniversary date, and the day Thomas was born. I never expected to win. The ritual itself was the reward, a way to remember the important dates and dream a little. The Thursday that changed everything seemed ordinary enough. May 12th. I walked the 6 blocks to Quickie Mart as usual, nodding to the regulars I passed on the sidewalk. Walter, the store owner, greeted me with his customary grin. 70-something with thick glasses and a veteran's cap, he knew every customer by name and life story. "Thursday already, Dustin, time flies when you're my age," he joked, reaching for the lottery slip before I even asked. "Getting to be that way for me too, Walt," I replied, counting out my 5 $1 bills as always. Walter ran my ticket through the machine and handed it to me. "You know, my cousin's neighbor won 20 grand last month. Could be your lucky day." I chuckled. "If these numbers ever hit first round at O'Malley's, is on me." "I'll hold you to that," Walter winked, already turning to the next customer. Walking home, I tucked the ticket into my wallet like precious cargo. That small rectangle of paper represented hope, however irrational. When I got back to Thomas's house, I did what I always did, pulled the ticket out and placed it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a pizza slice that Jack had made in preschool. "Another $5 down the drain, Dad," Thomas commented that evening, opening the fridge for a beer. Jessica rolled her eyes from the kitchen table where she was sorting through bills. "You know the odds are like 1 in 300 million, right? You'd have better luck getting struck by lightning while being attacked by a shark." "Probably right," I agreed amiably. "But dreaming is free." "Not exactly free if you spend $5 every week," she muttered. I let the comment slide, as I always did. The $5 wasn't the issue, and we all knew it. The past few months, their financial situation had deteriorated further. The second mortgage they'd taken out to consolidate credit card debt was now being supplemented by new credit card debt. Thomas had been passed over for a promotion he'd been counting on, and Jessica's car needed expensive transmission work. Their arguments grew more frequent and intense. The walls in the house weren't thick enough to muffle the harsh words exchanged after the kids went to bed. I often sat in my room with the television on just to give them privacy and myself peace from the constant tension. 2 nights before the lottery drawing, I overheard the most troubling conversation yet. "We need to talk to your dad," Jessica said. "We can't afford to carry him anymore." "What are you suggesting? We put him in a home?" "With what money?" Thomas snapped. "Maybe he could move in with one of his construction buddies, or get a part-time job." "I don't know, Tom, but something has to change. Emma needs braces, the roof is leaking in the corner of the garage, and we're maxed out on every card." I know. Thomas's voice sounded defeated. "Let me figure something out. Just give me a little time." The night of the lottery drawing, we all gathered in the living room out of habit rather than hope. It was a Wednesday evening ritual dinner bath time for the kids, then the local news followed by the lottery announcement. Usually Thomas checked his phone through the drawing and Jessica folded laundry or browsed online stores she couldn't afford to actually buy from. That night, the kids were already in bed when the drawing began. I sat in my usual recliner. Thomas sprawled on the couch with his laptop open to work emails, and Jessica flipped through a luxury home magazine, sighing occasionally at properties they couldn't afford. The announcer on screen went through the usual spiel about the jackpot being up to $53 million after rolling over 6 times. I barely paid attention until the first ball dropped 7. "Got one," I said, more out of habit than excitement. Thomas grunted noncommittally. The second ball, 15. I sat up a little straighter, 2 for 2. The third, 23. "Huh," Thomas said, finally glancing up from his laptop. Fourth ball, 27. Jessica lowered her magazine. "Wait, how many is that now?" Fifth ball, 38. The room went completely silent. We all stared at the screen, barely breathing. Final ball, 42. For several seconds, nobody moved or spoke. Then Thomas lunged for the refrigerator, yanking the ticket from under the pizza magnet. His hands trembled as he read the numbers, comparing them to what was displayed on the television screen. "Dad," he whispered, his face pale. "Dad, these match. They all match." Jessica snatched the ticket from him, her eyes widening. "Oh my God. Oh my God." Suddenly the house erupted in chaos. Jessica screamed and jumped up and down. Thomas kept repeating, "We won, we actually won," like a broken record. I sat frozen in my recliner, unable to process what had happened after 30 years of playing the same numbers. We checked and rechecked the numbers at least 20 times. Thomas pulled up the lottery website on his laptop, confirming what we already knew. We had the only winning ticket for $53 million. The celebration lasted well into the night. Thomas opened the expensive champagne they'd been saving for his promotion that never came. Jessica called her parents despite the late hour. I simply sat there, stunned, thinking about Marie and how she would have laughed at the cosmic joke of my persistent gambling finally paying off. Eventually, I went to bed, leaving Thomas and Jessica downstairs frantically researching lottery winners online and making lists of what they would buy. Through my bedroom wall, I could hear them talking excitedly until nearly dawn. I lay awake most of the night, thinking not about mansions or sports cars, but about fixing up my old pickup truck that had been sitting in Thomas's garage for 2 years. I thought about the veterans' home where some of my construction buddies now lived, how they could use better recreational facilities. Simple dreams, modest improvements to lives that mattered to me. Little did I know that while I made these humble plans, a very different conversation was happening downstairs. One that would reveal exactly who my son and his wife had become. The morning after the lottery drawing, I woke to a changed household. Thomas had called in sick to work something he never did. Jessica was on her phone talking animatedly about real estate in the wealthy part of town. The kids sensed the excitement, without understanding its source, running around with unusual freedom, while their parents were distracted. I made breakfast as usual, pancakes for the kids and coffee for the adults. When I set Thomas's mug in front of him, he barely acknowledged me, engrossed in his laptop screen showing luxury cars. "We should probably talk about next steps," I suggested carefully. "There will be taxes, decisions about lump sum versus annuity, financial advisors to consult." "Already on it, Dad," Thomas replied without looking up. "Jessica's father knows a wealth management team." Jessica ended her call and joined us at the table, her eyes bright with excitement. "I've got a realtor showing us 3 properties tomorrow. All gated communities, all over 5,000 square feet. I nodded slowly. "That sounds nice, but maybe we should wait until we actually have the money in hand. These things can take weeks to process." She gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. "We need to move quickly on the best properties. Don't worry about the details, Dustin. We've got this handled." The subtle dismissal was new. So was the way Thomas and Jessica kept exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. During a lull in the conversation, I heard Jessica whisper to Thomas, "We need to discuss the arrangement. Soon." Throughout that day, Thomas and Jessica behaved like the money was already in their bank account. Jessica ordered $3,000 worth of designer clothes online. Thomas researched yachts. Neither of them discussed how I would fit into these new plans, but I tried not to worry. The excitement was natural, and surely once it settled, we would have a rational family discussion. By mid-afternoon, Jessica's parents arrived, walking into the house with the confidence of people who belonged there more than I did. Gerald and Patricia Harper were in their 60s but looked 50, thanks to expensive health regimens and possible cosmetic enhancements Jessica had once hinted at. "There's our lucky family," Gerald boomed, hugging Jessica and Thomas while barely nodding at me. Patricia surveyed the modest living room with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just think, you'll never have to live like this again." I retreated to the kitchen, making coffee and arranging store-bought cookies on a plate while they talked excitedly in the living room. When I brought the refreshments out, the conversation abruptly shifted. "So Dustin," Gerald said with artificial joviality, "quite a windfall your family has come into." "Yes, sir," I replied. "Quite unexpected after all these years." "Jessica tells me you've been living here for some time," Patricia added, her tone making it sound like I was an extended house guest rather than family. 3 years now," I confirmed. "Helping with the grandkids, contributing what I can." Well, everything's going to change now, Gerald said, patting Thomas on the shoulder. New beginnings all around. The undercurrent in his words wasn't subtle. Throughout their visit, I noticed how conversations stopped when I entered rooms, how Jessica pulled Thomas aside for whispered conferences, how even the children were instructed to play in their rooms rather than underfoot as usual. By evening, Jessica had scheduled appointments with real estate agents, financial advisors, and luxury car dealerships. Thomas had researched private schools for the kids and country club memberships. Not once did either of them ask for my input or preferences, despite the fact that the winning ticket still sat on the refrigerator with my usual pizza slice magnet. That night, I heard them talking in their bedroom again. "We need to address the elephant in the room," Jessica said. "This house will sell in a heartbeat once we list it." I know, Thomas sighed. "But what about Dad?" "What about him, Tom? Be realistic. The lifestyle we're moving into, he wouldn't fit. Can you imagine him at the club or in the new neighborhood? People would think he's the gardener." There was a long pause before Thomas responded. "What are you suggesting?" "He's got his pension. With the housing market so good, he could get a nice little condo. Maybe we help with the down payment as a thank you." A thank you for what Thomas asked, and my heart sank at the genuine confusion in his voice. "Well, being your dad. Whatever. The point is, this is our chance, Tom. Our chance to live the life we deserve, to give the kids everything. Your father had his life. Now it's our turn." Another pause, longer this time. "You're right," Thomas finally said. "He'd be miserable in the new place anyway. He's set in his ways. We'll help him get settled somewhere appropriate." Appropriate. The word echoed in my mind as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Appropriate for a retired construction worker with a bad back and a modest pension. Appropriate for someone they now saw as inconvenient, incompatible with their new status. The next 2 days followed the same pattern. Jessica and Thomas were caught up in a whirlwind of plans and preparations. They discussed the lottery commission appointment scheduled for Monday, 3 days away, when they would officially claim the ticket. They barely spoke to me, except in passing, and when they did, there was a new condescension in their tone, as if I were already a charity case they were obligated to manage. On the 3rd day after the win, everything came to a head. I knew something was coming when Jessica asked her parents to take the kids for the afternoon. Thomas came home early from work, looking uncomfortable but determined. They asked me to join them in the living room for an important family discussion. I had no idea just how important it would turn out to be. I settled into my usual recliner, while Thomas and Jessica sat side by side on the couch across from me. The formal arrangement immediately put me on edge. This wasn't our normal casual family conversation positioning. Jessica wore a brand new outfit with the tags hastily removed, and Thomas had exchanged his usual work shirt for a polo from the expensive brand he normally considered too pricey. The transformation had already begun, though the money wasn't even in their possession yet. "Dad," Thomas started, then cleared his throat. "We wanted to talk to you about the future." Jessica cut in, clearly impatient with his hesitant approach. "Dustin, things are obviously going to change dramatically for our family. We've been discussing what makes the most sense for everyone." I nodded slowly. "I imagine quite a few things will change." "The thing is," Thomas continued, still not meeting my eyes, "the new house we're looking at is in Oakwood Estates. It's a different kind of community." "Very exclusive," Jessica added a new sharpness in her voice. "The houses start at $3 million. I raised my eyebrows but said nothing, waiting for them to reach their point. "We think," Thomas said, then stopped and corrected himself. "We know that it would be best if you found your own place. We can help you with that, of course." The words hung in the air, though they weren't entirely unexpected after what I'd overheard in recent days. "I see," I said quietly. "And when would this transition happen?" Jessica leaned forward. "As soon as possible. We're closing on the new house next week, assuming everything goes smoothly with the lottery commission on Monday. We'll put this house on the market immediately." "Next week," I repeated, genuinely surprised at the timeline. "That's very quick." "We don't want to miss out on the perfect property," Jessica replied dismissively. "The real estate market waits for no one." "The thing is," Dad, Thomas finally looked at me, though his gaze kept sliding away. "We need to make a clean break. Start fresh. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. For us, I repeated, noting the exclusion. Jessica's patience visibly thinned. Let's be honest here, Dustin. We have been carrying you financially for 3 years. Your pension barely covers your personal expenses, let alone your share of the household costs. Jessica Thomas warned, but without much conviction. No, it needs to be said, she insisted. We don't need your pathetic pension cash anymore. We are going to be multi-millionaires. The children need space to grow, opportunities only money can provide. Having you underfoot in the new house would just be awkward. Awkward, I echoed, feeling a cold weight settling in my stomach. You're set in your ways, Thomas added, as if this explained everything. The new lifestyle wouldn't suit you. And what lifestyle is that, I asked, keeping my voice level with effort. Country clubs, charity galas, business dinners, Jessica listed off rapidly. Private schools, tennis lessons, summer homes. A retirement community would be much more your speed. The cruel dismissal of my entire existence stunned me into momentary silence. 3 decades of playing those numbers based on the family I had built and cherished. The family now telling me I was inconvenient, incompatible with their vision of the future. We were thinking, Thomas said, clearly uncomfortable, but pressing forward, we could help you with a deposit on a small condo. Something manageable on your pension. How generous, I said quietly. And if I don't want to leave? Jessica's face hardened. This house will be sold next week. We're not renewing the lease on your storage unit where your furniture island. You don't really have a choice, Dustin. We're trying to be fair here, Dad, Thomas added weakly. Fair would be acknowledging whose numbers those were on the ticket, I pointed out. Whose $5 bought it. Whose 30-year tradition finally paid off. Jessica actually laughed, a brittle, dismissive sound. Oh, please. You've been living rent-free in our house. We've been feeding you, paying the utilities you use. That $5 was ours 10 times over every single month. Is that how you see it, Thomas? I asked my son directly. That I've been a burden you've been carrying. He couldn't hold my gaze. You know we love you, Dad. But this is our chance. Our one shot at giving the kids everything we never had. I gave you everything I could, I said softly. Worked 80-hour weeks to put you through college. Never missed a school event. Taught you to ride a bike, drive a car, be a man. That was your job as a parent, Jessica interjected coldly. You don't get extra credit for basic parenting, and you don't get to guilt-trip Thomas for wanting better for his own children. I looked at my son, searching for any sign of the boy I'd raised, the young man who once volunteered at homeless shelters and helped elderly neighbors with yard work. He stared at the coffee table, jaw clenched. The bottom line, Jessica continued, her voice harder now, is that you have 1 week to find alternative arrangements. We can give you $3,000 toward a new place, but that's it. And if I can't find something suitable in a week, I asked. Jessica shrugged. Not our problem. Go die somewhere else for all I care. We have a new life waiting, and frankly, you're not part of it. Thomas winced at her words, but didn't contradict them. His silence was a betrayal far deeper than her cruelty. I understand, I said, finally standing up slowly, my back protesting the movement after sitting tense for so long. I'll start making arrangements. I walked to my bedroom without another word, closed the door quietly, and sat on the edge of my bed. Through the thin walls, I could hear Jessica immediately launch into excited chatter about the new house, Thomas responding with increasing enthusiasm, as if the weight of betraying his father had already lifted from his shoulders. That night, I took out the photo albums I'd kept all these years. Pictures of Thomas as a toddler, learning to walk with my finger clutched in his tiny fist. Thomas at 10 brave face at his mother's funeral, holding my hand so tight it hurt. Thomas at graduation, arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming with pride. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost him. Or rather, he'd chosen to become someone else, someone his mother wouldn't recognize. The money hadn't created this new Thomas, it had merely revealed who he'd been becoming all along. I carefully put the albums away and made a decision. I wouldn't reveal my hand yet. Monday's appointment with the Lottery Commission would proceed as planned, but with one crucial detail they'd overlooked. Throughout my shock and hurt, one thing kept me going. They hadn't asked to see the actual ticket since that first night. It still sat on the refrigerator under its pizza slice magnet, and they hadn't bothered to examine it closely. They would learn soon enough what they'd missed in their greedy rush toward wealth. The morning after being told to leave, I walked to the Quickie Mart, as I did every Thursday, though buying a new lottery ticket seemed pointless now. Walter greeted me with unusual enthusiasm. "There you are, you lucky son of a gun," he exclaimed as I entered. "Heard on the news that the winning ticket was sold right here. Figured it had to be you with those same numbers week after week." I managed a tired smile. News travels fast. Walter leaned closer across the counter. "So it is you, hot damn Dustin, remember that beer you promised me?" "I remember," I assured him. "Listen, Walt, did you happen to notice the signature on that ticket when I bought it?" He adjusted his thick glasses. "Course I did. Same as always. You signing it right at the counter like clockwork. Smart too, given what's happened to folks who lost unsigned tickets." "You'd testify to that if needed?" I asked. Walter's jovial expression turned serious. "Something wrong, Dustin." I briefly explained the situation with Thomas and Jessica. Walter's face darkened as I spoke. "That ain't right," he said firmly. "Not by a long shot. And yes, I'd testify. Plus we got security cameras. New digital system installed last month. Keeps 30 days of footage. Shows you buying that ticket clear as day, signing it right here at the counter like always." "Could I get a copy of that footage?" I asked. "You bet. Come back this afternoon, I'll have it ready on a flash drive. And Dustin, make those ungrateful brats squirm." My next stop was to see Frank Rodriguez, an attorney I'd known for 20 years. We'd worked on the same construction sites when Frank was putting himself through law school nights and weekends. Now he had his own small practice specializing in family law and estate planning. Frank listened without interruption as I explained the situation, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he removed his reading glasses and leaned back in his chair. "They've got no claim, Dustin. Zero. If the ticket is in your name, signed by you, purchased with your money, it's legally yours. Period." "They'll argue I was living off them," I pointed out. Frank shook his head. "Irrelevant. Even if you had an explicit agreement that your lottery purchases were made with household funds, which you don't, the ticket is still legally yours as the purchaser and signatory. What should I do at the lottery commission meeting? Let them show up. Let them make their claim. Then present your ID and the signed ticket. The commission deals with family disputes all the time. They're very careful about verification. Bring the store footage too, just as backup." I left Frank's office with renewed resolve. On my way home, I stopped by the bank and withdrew the small emergency fund I kept in a separate account Thomas knew nothing about. Just enough to rent a motel room for a few days if needed. When I returned to the house, Jessica's Mercedes was in the driveway next to an unfamiliar luxury SUV. Inside, I found Jessica giving her parents a tour, speaking loudly about which furniture they'd replace and which walls they'd knock down in the new house. "And this poky little kitchen will be completely gutted," she was saying as I walked in. "The new house has a professional grade setup, but we'll still renovate to make it perfect." Gerald and Patricia nodded approvingly, barely acknowledging my presence. Jessica continued as if I were invisible. "The pool will be ready by July. I'm thinking of having it designed in the shape of a $sign," she laughed. "Too tacky." "Nothing's too tacky when you've got 53 million reasons to celebrate," Gerald replied, chuckling. "Closer to 30 after taxes," Thomas corrected, walking in from the living room. "Still more than enough for everything we want." I moved quietly through the kitchen, making a sandwich while listening to their plans. College funds for the children that they could access at 18, a vacation home in Aspen, his and hers luxury cars. "The lottery commission appointment is set for 10 on Monday," Thomas mentioned. "They said it'll take about 3 hours to process everything, verify the ticket, and start the funds transfer. And we close on the new house Wednesday," Jessica added excitedly. "Everything's happening so fast." "As it should," Patricia said. "No sense waiting when you know what you want." I took my sandwich to my room, closing the door on their continued planning. That evening, I visited Walter again and collected the security footage, then packed a small bag with essentials. Whatever happened Monday, I doubted I'd be welcome in that house afterward. The weekend passed in strained silence. Thomas and Jessica spent most of it shopping or meeting with real estate agents and financial advisors. When they were home, they spoke around me rather than to me. The children, picking up on the tension, became unusually quiet when I was present. Sunday night, I carefully removed the lottery ticket from the refrigerator and confirmed what I already knew, my signature clear and unmistakable across the back. I placed it in my wallet for safekeeping. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. Thomas and Jessica were up early dressed in expensive new outfits. Jessica wore a designer dress that must have cost thousands, and Thomas had on a tailored suit I'd never seen before. They barely glanced at me as I came into the kitchen in my usual jeans and flannel shirt. "You're not coming to the appointment, are you?" Jessica asked, eyeing my casual clothes with distaste. "Thought I might," I replied mildly. "See how the process works." She exchanged a look with Thomas. "It's really not necessary. We know how busy the commission office gets. No need for all of us to waste a day there." "I don't mind," I said. "Not like I have much else planned." Thomas checked his watch. "We should get going. The traffic will be heavy downtown." I followed them out to Jessica's Mercedes. She frowned as I approached the passenger door. "We're taking separate cars," she announced. "We have appointments afterward." "No problem," I said, moving toward my old truck. "I'll meet you there." The lottery commission office was in a gleaming downtown building with security guards and metal detectors at the entrance. I arrived shortly after Thomas and Jessica, finding them already checking in at the reception desk. "Names?" the receptionist asked. "Thomas and Jessica Wilson," my son replied confidently. "We have an appointment regarding a winning ticket." "Ah, yes, the 53 million jackpot. Congratulations," she smiled professionally. "If you'll take a seat, someone will be with you shortly to verify your ticket and identification." They sat in the waiting area, Jessica already texting excitedly on her phone. I approached the desk separately. "Dustin Wilson," I said quietly. "I believe there's an appointment regarding a lottery ticket." The receptionist checked her computer. "Yes. Are you with the Thomas Wilson party?" "In a manner of speaking," I replied. I took a seat across from Thomas and Jessica rather than joining them. Jessica noticed and rolled her eyes. "Really, Dustin, this is childish. You know you're only making this harder on yourself." Before I could respond, a professional-looking woman in a sharp suit approached. "Thomas Wilson, Jessica Wilson. I'm Amanda Patel, verification officer. If you'll follow me, we can begin the claims process." They stood eagerly. I rose as well, following a few steps behind. "Excuse me," Jessica said to the officer, "but he doesn't need to be part of this." She gestured dismissively toward me. Amanda looked confused. "And you are, sir?" "Dustin Wilson, Thomas's father." "I see," she replied neutrally. "Well, family members are welcome to observe the process, though only the ticket holder will need to sign documentation." Jessica's smile tightened. "Actually, we'd prefer privacy for this financial matter." Amanda glanced between us, clearly sensing tension. "Perhaps we should proceed to the verification room and sort this out." She led us down a hallway to a conference room with the Lottery Commission logo on the wall. Another official waited inside with forms spread across the table. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, congratulations on your win," he said, standing to shake their hands. "I'm Robert Chen, Claims Director. We just need to verify your ticket and identification. Then we can proceed with the paperwork." "Wonderful." Jessica beamed, nudging Thomas. Right, Thomas cleared his throat. "We're very excited to claim our prize and move forward with our plans." Robert nodded professionally. "May I see the winning ticket and your identification, please?" Thomas froze. "The ticket? Jessica, did you bring the ticket?" Jessica's smile faltered. "What? No, you were supposed to bring it. It was on the refrigerator." As they began to panic, I quietly removed my wallet, extracted the lottery ticket, and placed it on the table. "The ticket is right here," I said calmly. Robert picked it up, examining it carefully. "Yes, this matches our records. The winning numbers purchased at Quickie Mart on Lincoln Avenue." He turned it over. "And it's signed by Dustin Wilson." He looked up confused. "Not Thomas Wilson." "Exactly," I said quietly. Jessica's face drained of color. Thomas stared at the ticket, as if seeing it for the first time. "There must be some mistake," Jessica stammered. "That's our ticket. We live together. We're a family." Robert looked at the signature again, then at my driver's license, which I'd placed next to the ticket. "The signature matches this ID. Mr. Dustin Wilson." This is ridiculous, Jessica snapped, her voice rising. Dustin lives with us. He uses our money to buy those tickets every week. Actually, I interjected, I've used my own money every Thursday for 30 years to purchase my lottery tickets. I always sign them immediately, as Walter at the Quickie Mart can confirm. I also have security footage showing me purchasing and signing this specific ticket. Thomas sank into a chair, his face ashen. Dad, what are you doing? I met my son's eyes steadily. What you and Jessica made necessary, Thomas. Jessica's shock quickly turned to rage. You sneaky old bastard, you knew all along. You let us make plans, you let us close on a house, you let us believe. I let you show me exactly who you are. I finished for her. Both of you. Sir Robert addressed me formally. Given the dispute, here we'll need to verify your purchase. Do you have the security footage you mentioned? I handed over the flash drive Walter had prepared. The purchase occurred on May 12th at approximately 2:15 in the afternoon. Robert nodded. We'll review this immediately. Please wait here. He and Amanda left with the ticket, my ID, and the flash drive. As soon as the door closed, Jessica rounded on me. You backstabbing parasite, after everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me, I repeated incredulously, like telling me to go die somewhere else, because I didn't fit your new image. Like dismissing 30 years of my work, raising Thomas as basic parenting. Dad, Thomas began, his voice shaking. We can work this out. As a family. We just got carried away with the excitement. Carried away, I echoed. Thomas, you sat silent while your wife told me I had 1 week to find somewhere else to live. You agreed I didn't belong in your new life. We were going to help you, he insisted weakly. With $3,000 toward a new place, I reminded him. After winning $53 million, that's your idea of family loyalty. Jessica paced the room like a caged animal. This is a nightmare. We've already put deposits down, signed contracts, told everyone. That was premature, I observed. Counting your lottery winnings before verifying whose ticket it was. The door opened, and Robert returned with Amanda. Their expressions were professionally neutral. We've verified the security footage, Robert announced. It clearly shows Mr. Dustin Wilson purchasing the ticket and signing it immediately. Additionally, the store owner provided a statement confirming Mr. Wilson has purchased tickets with the same numbers every Thursday for years. Jessica made a choked sound of rage and disbelief. Therefore, Robert continued, we recognize Dustin Wilson as the rightful claimant of the $53 million jackpot. Mr. Wilson, if you'll come with us, we can complete the necessary paperwork. This isn't over, Jessica hissed. We'll sue. We'll fight this every step of the way. On what grounds, I asked calmly. That you assumed something that wasn't yours belonged to you. You lived in our house, she nearly screamed. You ate our food. And now you've shown me exactly how much that family connection means to you, I replied, standing to follow Robert. Sweetie, maybe next time read whose name is on the lottery ticket before you start spending the money. The look of shock on their faces as I walked out of that room would stay with me for a long time. So would the hollow feeling in my chest, where my love for my son used to be. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork, photographs, and financial discussions. I opted for the lump sum payment rather than annuity, which reduced the total to about $31 million before taxes. After federal and state taxes, I would receive approximately $17 million, still an unfathomable amount for someone who had worked with his hands his entire life. Thomas and Jessica were nowhere to be seen when I emerged from the Lottery Commission offices. Amanda escorted me to my truck through a side entrance to avoid the small crowd of reporters who had gotten wind of the win. Congratulations again, Mr. Wilson, she said professionally. Your check will be processed within 48 hours. I recommend staying somewhere secure until then, as winners often find themselves suddenly popular. I nodded, thinking of the motel room I'd already reserved. Thank you for your help today. I drove directly to the motel, checked in under a pseudonym as Frank had advised, and collapsed onto the bed. The emotional toll of the confrontation left me drained in a way physical labor never had. My phone buzzed repeatedly with calls and messages from Thomas, which I ignored. I needed time to process everything before facing him again. The next morning, I drove past Thomas and Jessica's house, curious about what I would find. Jessica's Mercedes was gone, as was Thomas's car. A neighbor watering plants confirmed they'd loaded suitcases into their vehicles the previous evening and driven away separately. I used my key to enter the eerily quiet house. Emma and Jack's toys still littered the playroom, but many of Jessica's designer items were missing from the master bedroom. Thomas's closet showed gaps where his best suits had been. On the kitchen counter, I found a hastily scrawled note. "Dad, please call me. We need to talk. T." I folded the note and put it in my pocket, then gathered the few personal possessions that mattered to me: photo albums, Marie's jewelry box, my father's watch. Everything else could be replaced. As Frank had predicted, Thomas called constantly over the next few days. I finally answered on the third day once the initial shock had begun to fade. "Dad," his voice cracked with relief when I picked up. "Thank God. I've been so worried." "Have you?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Of course I have. Look what happened at the lottery commission. We need to talk about it. Face to face. Please." "Where are you staying?" I asked. A pause. "At Jessica's parents' place. Just temporarily." "And Jessica?" Another pause, longer this time. We're taking some time apart. Things got complicated." "Complicated," I repeated. "Is that what you call telling your father to find somewhere else to die?" "Dad, that was Jessica, not me. I never would have said that." "But you didn't contradict her either," I pointed out. "Your silence was agreement, Thomas." He had no response to that. "Where are my grandchildren?" I asked. "With Jessica at her parents'. Dad, everything's fallen apart. The house we put a deposit on, they're threatening to sue for breach of contract. The new schools want non-refundable registration fees. Jessica's already spent thousands on credit cards." "None of which is my problem," I said quietly. "Dad, please," he begged. "Can we meet? Just talk. I know I screwed up badly. I got caught up in Jessica's vision and the excitement. I forgot what matters. Despite everything, he was still my son. Tomorrow, noon, O'Malley's Diner." "Thank you," he breathed. "Thank you, Dad." O'Malley's was a working-class establishment where I'd taken Thomas for burgers since he was a boy. When I arrived, I found him already waiting in a booth, looking disheveled in a way I'd never seen before. His designer shirt was wrinkled, his face unshaved, dark circles under his eyes. "You look terrible," I observed, sliding into the seat across from him. "Jessica left," he said without preamble. "Took the kids to her parents and served me with divorce papers yesterday. She's claiming I defrauded her about the lottery ticket." I signaled the waitress for coffee before responding. "That was quick." "She had a prenup," Thomas explained, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "Her parents insisted. It protected her family money, but it works both ways. She gets nothing from me if we divorce except child support." "I see," I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug the waitress delivered. "And your job?" He winced. "I quit last week, right after we thought we'd won. Told my boss exactly what I thought of him and the company. Burned that bridge completely." "So you're unemployed, getting divorced, and homeless," I summarized. "All within a week of telling me to find somewhere else to live because I didn't fit your new lifestyle." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "I know how it sounds. I know what I did. I have no excuse. You had a choice, Thomas. Every step of the way you had choices to make." "I chose wrong," he admitted, voice breaking. "I let Jessica's materialism infect me. I forgot everything you taught me about what really matters." We sat in silence for a moment, the background clatter of the diner filling the space between us. "What are you going to do now?" I finally asked. "I don't know," he confessed. "I've got some savings, but not much after the down payment on the house we can't afford now. Maybe enough for a cheap apartment for a few months while I job hunt. Jessica's keeping the house and selling it." "And your relationship with your children?" His face crumpled. "Jessica's parents are already talking about limited visitation. They've always thought I wasn't good enough for their daughter. Now they have proof." Despite everything, my heart ached for him. This broken man was still the boy I'd raised, the child I'd taught to ride a bike and throw a baseball. The young man who'd once had compassion and integrity before losing his way. "I won't bail you out," I said firmly. "Not with money." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I don't expect that. I don't deserve it." But I continued. "I'll help you rebuild, On my terms. He looked up, hope flickering across his exhausted face. What terms? You find a job. Any job, even if it's stocking shelves or washing dishes. You live within your means. You fight for fair access to your children. You remember the values I raised you with. And if I do all that, then we can discuss next steps. No promises, Thomas. You have to earn back my trust, and that won't happen overnight. He reached across the table, hand outstretched. I'll do whatever it takes, Dad. I promise. I didn't take his hand. Promises are easy. Actions matter. Show me who you really are, not who you say you are. As I left the diner, I felt both the weight of disappointment and a glimmer of hope. The boy I'd raised was still in there somewhere, buried beneath layers of materialism and poor choices. Whether he could find his way back remained to be seen. The coming months would test us both in ways neither of us could have imagined. 6 months passed, bringing changes I never could have predicted the day I purchased that winning lottery ticket. I bought a comfortable but modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood close enough to visit my old construction buddies at the veterans' home regularly. My back still gave me trouble some mornings, but having proper health care for the first time in years made a tremendous difference. Most of my windfall went into secure investments, managed by financial advisors who specialized in sudden wealth transitions. A significant portion I set aside in trusts for Emma and Jack, accessible when they turned 30, with provisions for education expenses before then. Jessica fought this arrangement initially, but her own lawyers advised her it was more than generous. I found purpose in funding renovations at the veterans' home, creating a woodworking shop where retired tradesmen could continue practicing their crafts. 3 days a week, I taught basic construction skills to at-risk youth through a community program, showing them how to use their hands to build rather than destroy. Thomas, true to his word, started rebuilding his life from the ground up. He found work as an assistant bookkeeper at a small local business, earning barely above minimum wage. He rented a 1-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood, furnished it with second-hand items, and drove a 10-year-old Honda he bought with his remaining savings. Every Thursday, he joined me for dinner. The first few weeks were awkward conversations, stilted by the weight of betrayal between us. Gradually, though, something new began to emerge from the wreckage of our relationship. Not the blind trust of before, but a more honest connection built on hard lessons learned. The divorce is final, Thomas told me during one of these dinners, about 4 months after everything happened. Jessica got the house, but it sold for less than they owed on it with the second mortgage. She's moved back in with her parents permanently. And the children, I asked. The grandchildren I rarely saw now, their visits carefully supervised by Jessica's mother. I get them every other weekend, Thomas said, a small victory in his voice. It's not enough, but it's something. I'm saving to get a 2-bedroom apartment so they'll have their own space when they visit. I nodded, noticing the changes in my son. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple, functional attire. The status anxiety that had dominated his conversations had disappeared. He spoke about his work with the pride of someone rediscovering the value of earning his way. I had a job interview yesterday, he mentioned. Staff accountant at a construction company. Nothing fancy, but better pay. And they seemed impressed that I was willing to start over at the bottom. Construction's in your blood, I observed. Even if you work with numbers instead of lumber. I thought about what you said about building things that last, Thomas replied. I want to build a life my kids can be proud of. A life I can be proud of. By the 6-month mark, Thomas had secured the accountant position and moved to a small 2-bedroom apartment where Emma and Jack had their own room during visits. He'd stopped asking about my money, instead focusing on his own slow but steady progress. Christmas approached, the first since everything had changed. I invited Thomas and the children to my new home, decorated simply but warmly for the season. Jessica, after initial resistance, agreed to let the kids spend Christmas Eve and morning with us. The night before Christmas, with the children finally asleep, after hours of excited anticipation, Thomas and I sat in the living room, the tree lights casting soft shadows. I was thinking, I said carefully, about next steps. Thomas looked up from his coffee. What kind of steps? I gestured around us. This house has a detached garage I don't use. It would make a decent workshop. I've been thinking about taking on small renovation projects, mostly for seniors who need modifications to stay in their homes. That sounds perfect for you, Dad. I could use a partner, I continued. Someone to handle the books, help with estimates, eventually learn the trade side too. Thomas stared at me. Are you offering me a job? More like a partnership. Rebuilding homes for people who need help. Reasonable hours so you can be there for your kids. Building something that matters, something that could be yours someday. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say you'll think about it, I replied. No rush, no pressure. But the offer's there when you're ready. On Christmas morning, I presented Thomas with a simple wooden box I'd crafted in the veteran's workshop. Inside were my old, well-worn tools, each cleaned and sharpened to perfection. These built our life, once I told him as he ran his fingers over the worn handles. Maybe they can help build a new one. The months that followed brought steady healing both to our relationship and to Thomas's sense of self. He accepted my partnership offer and we established Wilson & Son Home Modifications, specializing in accessibility renovations for elderly and disabled clients. Thomas learned quickly his accountant's precision, complementing my practical experience. Jessica eventually remarried a wealthy older man who provided the lifestyle she'd always wanted. She became less hostile about the children's relationship with us, perhaps recognizing that Thomas was becoming the father they deserved. My lottery winnings, rather than destroying my family as such, windfalls often do, ultimately revealed truths that needed facing. Money doesn't change who people are. It simply amplifies what was already there. Thomas had lost his way long before the winning ticket, seduced by materialism and status anxiety that didn't align with his true values. The hardest lesson I learned was that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. I forgave my son, but with eyes wide open. Our new relationship had clear boundaries and expectations, mutual respect that had to be earned rather than assumed. Conditional love isn't really love at all, but unconditional forgiveness is foolish. The middle path of forgiveness with accountability proved healing for us both. Today, as I look at Thomas teaching his son how to measure twice and cut once, I see the values I tried to instill taking root again. The money that nearly destroyed us sits mostly untouched in trusts and investments. Its purpose now to provide security rather than status opportunities, rather than indulgences. The true wealth I've discovered isn't in my bank account. It's in the sound of my grandchildren's laughter as they help in the workshop. It's in the gratitude of an elderly client who can now navigate their home safely. It's in watching my son rebuild his life with honest work and rediscovered integrity. Would I have chosen this difficult path? Of course not. But sometimes the most valuable journeys are the ones we never planned to take. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have forgiven Thomas or walked away completely? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more life lessons from an old man who learned them the hard way. And remember, in life's most difficult moments, we discover not just who others truly are, but who we are as well. Thank you for listening, and may your own family bonds be built on something more valuable than money.